All right, let me take two on this because I realized the first time I did this, YouTube might interpret it as a call to malicious acts at a large level. So let me try this again. J.K. Rowling, with crazy SJWs on Twitter, you can use this probing fire technique to get them to make themselves look like these sociopaths they really are. This is how insane they are. There are a few things going on here. They are legitimately mentally ill, but a lot of this is first world problems. People who have nothing going on in their life except for Twitter. And really anything would be better than the time you spent on Twitter. Preferably a little bit of exercise. But read a book. How about reading a book? Start a channel. Start talking about something you're interested in. I started reading Roots, which it turns out that it's I'm reading it now for laughs because it's fiction and plagiarized. And then it may have been ghost written by this guy Murray Fisher, who was a Playboy editor. So it's insane. But like you read the first chapter and you think, oh, this is just, it's just artistic license. The guy's like showing the best light of his tribal life, and you're like, this is, and after a few chapters, this is just insane. This is just like everyone is dancing and feasting all the time, and it's like they're constantly affirming each other. It's like purse puppy comics, modern comics. It's just like go read the first few chapters of Roots. You're like, this is fantasy world. This is not Africa in 1750. Anyway, anything is better than being on Twitter and arguing about who's got the bigger trans lady dick. The issue is one side is referring to biological sex and the other is referring to how a person feels. So there's really no meeting in the middle ground on that. It's like compelled speech versus not. It's like, we want you to say, use these pronouns. And the other person says, well, that's compelled speech. I have the right not to say that. No. We'll destroy you. Well, that makes you the authoritarians. Well, you're denying my right to existence. No, you're denying my right to speak. Which one causes the greater harm here? To cater to less than 1% of a mentally... YouTube is tricky. Let me say less than 1% of a crowd that may have issues than, the other 99% of the crowd who sees the world as it is, causal universe, cause and effect, that kind of thing. Where is I going with this? Most women don't want to go in a changing room with men. If people were okay with that, we would just have unisex showers and bathrooms. Gee, why don't we have that? Like, why hasn't society developed that? Oh, well, there's one society in bumfuck nowhere. Yeah, okay, I'm talking about the majority societies. We don't have men in the ladies' room showering with them. For whatever reason, I don't know why, but we just don't do it. Another thing is the fastest or strongest female athlete is slower and weaker than the best high school boys. So there's zero overlap between the best male and female athletes. The men are all faster or stronger than the women. Women, because there's a biological difference in anatomy and pivot points and leverage length and leverage arms, that kind of thing. So if you allowed women to compete with men, the results wouldn't change. But if men compete with women, then every single one of the women will lose. Which means female sports will be 100% biological males, which is why you're going to see more boys entering women's sports to get scholarships, to get into college, and take those away from the girls, or even just to make some money. There are high school boys who are better than the best female WNBA players. You get out of high school, you're like, I'm not good enough for college ball, but I can try out for the WNBA, make six figures. All I have to do is say I'm a woman. It's like, I'm 6'6", I'm not good enough for college. What else am I going to do? WNBA will pay me very well. I'll take a woman's spot. Well, eventually, if someone does that, all it takes is one guy to crack the shield, and like, it would be eventually it would just be dudes. It would be like a minor league basketball club, which would probably be cool because it would be better because you finally have people who could dunk and actually play basketball as opposed to watching chicks like just run around. So eventually someone's going to find their stones and they're going to stop this, or maybe not. And I actually support crushing these girls' hopes and dreams because it shows you how evil SJW globalists are. And also, like, why are women going to the Olympics or college in the first place? Shouldn't they be getting married and raising kids? Women in college is kind of a waste of resources that could go elsewhere. It's like, you go to college, why? Like, 4 years of your most fertile peak period are wasted in school for something just like, you got a communications degrees or some Bachelor of Arts in something stupid. It's like, if you're not doing STEM, don't bother going to college. go get married. They believe women and men can do whatever they want and that they're equal. Then men should be allowed to compete with women without transitioning and taking hormones. After all, women don't take estrogen to be women, so why should men? I'm sure that the Olympic Committee is mostly globalist, but it's also a huge cash cow for tens of thousands of businesses and retailers and stuff that are tied into the Olympics. And I suspect that most countries are not going to be cool with men in women's sports. Anyway, so J.K. Rowling is drawing fire, and Twitter is perfect for that because normies look at a situation. You see this beautiful woman who writes kids' books, who just seems like a lovely, she's a little bleeding heart liberal, giving away hundreds of millions of dollars to charity. She seems like a nice person, even if she is a whack job on the left. But she's not insane. She says, hey, women are women. And, biological women want their own biological spaces. No offense to anyone, but it's like, you're talking 99% of women want their own biological spaces. And to be fair, 99% of men want their own spaces too. And that's, like, are you going to cater to the 1% and alienate the 99%? It's like, it's a little nuts. I mean, maybe in some circumstances, you could build a third bathroom, but really, like, bathrooms are not gender-based, they're sex-based. There's men and women, the XXXY. It's like, yeah, okay, maybe you're the 1 in 40,000 who's got an abnormality, but the first two markers on that are XXXY. Anything that comes after that doesn't determine sex. It determines an abnormality. You're still the first two indicators, which is a hard binary. Just do the bathrooms like that. Anyway, so heaven forbid that she say that women have their own spaces, and the response to that very reasonable comment is death and struggle snuggles. Coming from the left wing, and what's even weirder is that very few people are speaking out against actual threats of violence. It's just a black hole of support where other blue check marks aren't jumping in there and saying, yeah, this isn't, they support men in the women's room and all this, but threatening to kill someone because they disagree with you is insane. That makes you the bad guy, and more people should be speaking out. They don't. Very little support for this. Very little support. And here's what the kids are trying to do. These brainwashed commie kids are basically in a cult of Bolshevism, Marxism. They're trying to equate the term transphobe as equal to racist or worse, because trans, to be fair, is a much smaller group. It's like a tiny little fraction of humanity. And they're trying to get you to accept that anyone who is any kind of istophobic deserves death. But they're going to start with deplatforming, doxing, firing you. The trans people will start dehumanizing people who are not on board. Anyone that is the enemy, they'll start dehumanizing them, trying to hurt them socially. And then ultimately, it'll go to the gulags like it's gone before, where 100 million people have been deleted because of kids like this. Mao's little red book, where the kids are turning in their parents. That's how powerful brainwashing is. So yeah, the gulags are absolutely on the horizon unless we take care of the situation. You know what I mean. So they don't want to define words because they want to always move the goalposts. They want to redraw the circle so that they can exclude you. Because once you define terms, well, we can build arguments and rebuttals and counter arguments to those terms, and they don't want that because we have logic and facts and reason and cause and effect on our side, and they have feelings. So they're always going to lose. If we have a space to discuss things reasonably, that's why they have to deplatform and argue from emotion. If you don't want men to shower with little girls, and really, why would you want to shower with little girls? It's just so creepy. Then you're anti-trans, and you must be deleted from this mortal coil. Yes, that literally makes them groomers. Oh, note too, you can't say groomers in the YouTube comments. YouTube will delete those comments, which they are slowly coming out of the closet about. In 5 years, Antifa will be openly banging kids. It doesn't matter what word they put in front of phobic, it's just something they want to use as a shield. The thing to remember with a lot of these people is that they have serious mental health issues. Now you combine that with social media that pushes their insane beliefs. These people are the useful idiots, and they're very dangerous, violent people, as we've seen with those anti-Comicsgate people. Tim Doyle threatening Tug, Michelle Perez threatening Myers' kids, Max Visagia threatening to kill cis people with a baseball bat. they're living in this. Oh, and Ethan Van Sciver received 3 death threats that I am aware of, which means there's probably a few that slipped through the cracks. And yeah, these people are nuts. They're living in this echo chamber where they don't have any consequences because they're saying the stuff online. And so you say it in real life. You can say a lot of crazy shit in real life without getting punched, or without getting somebody doing something. But eventually, your number comes up where you can say so much on social media. It's just you're not getting the real consequences. These are useful idiots. So they're living in the delusion that when you introduce facts that kind of pierces their veil, they get incandescent with rage because their real life is a very dark place. And if we were an actual nation, we'd get them to therapy and medication. Maybe it would be the most compassionate thing to do because a lot of these people are going to end up on the streets anyway. But we can't do that because there are other factors at play. Okay, so the people who are actually pulling the strings in this are a part of the group, but they're a few steps up the ladder. They're crazy also, but they're hiding their power levels. Though if you follow a few hundred of these alt-left blue check marks, then after a few months, you're going to know the way of their world. But to get these deluded people treatment, it would be necessary to discuss why the media and social media and academia are pushing it. And that would basically kind of kick off a civil conflict. And most normies don't want to go to war to save mentally ill people who are not of their tribe, which also relates to the reason the globalists are pushing diversity so hard. It makes everyone depressed and apathetic. They won't fight to save a nation that doesn't really belong to anyone except the bankers, the ultra wealthy. It's like, what are we fighting for? The country's already kind of lost. So they have set the forces in motion a long time ago that will destroy the nation, where only a conflict can fix it, but they also enrich the country so people are less likely to fight to save it. They set up a binary where the last red pill takes this civil conflict. Most people are content with bread and circuses while Soros fiddles on. So yes, at first blush, what I said sounds a bit of a conditional, tangential tinfoil hat. But if you listen to this and other channels, eventually you're going to be wearing the same aluminum headgear. Basically, how treating the mentally ill will cause civil war and probably Dub 3. Take something like cuties. Why was the media so strangely defensive of that little joint Israeli-African project? Doesn't that seem weird? Doesn't a lot of what is going on seem like Sodom and Gomorrah level stuff? Oh, I remember when the cutie things came out and we were making videos on that, and people said, "Oh, it's the French, it's the French, it's the French. They're all these French, crazy people, French." People point out, no, it's actually an Israeli African project, and it's like, oh. And they start getting defensive. It's like, wait, you were happy to blame the French, but when they point out it's from Israeli producer and African director, suddenly it's not so relevant anymore. How does that work? So the goal of all these death threats, doxings, and firings is to have the chilling effect on non-degenerate speech by normies. They wouldn't be able to get away with trans boys dancing on stage and men throwing money at them. Yes, that really happens. If people knew that they could speak without getting fired, if I said what you... I don't want the FBI to kick down my door. I mean, you know what? Like, 30 years ago, if you told people that there were little boys dancing on stage for men, like, what do you think the response would be? What should you have done? Anyway, they get away with it because they have the power of social media, and they've got millions of useful idiots that they can rouse to their defense. So that's why this situation is so effed up, because you can't really stop social media, and the politicians won't pass laws to protect people from getting fired for political discrimination, because they're not American politicians. They're not America first. They're other countries first. There's literally no one. Geez, Trump and DeSantis, look at their record of free speech and what countries you can't criticize. Yeah, that was Trump and DeSantis that passed those laws. You probably know what I'm talking about. So no, they're not your guys. Oh, they're so based. Really? Go look at DeSantis' record on the First Amendment. So nobody in Congress is going to do anything. And this is just going to continue to deteriorate until we decide to split, peacefully, legally after a legally process. And if we decide to do that, I think most people are going to be supportive of that decision, a split along ideological divisions, because people are tired of walking through landmines, and like every time a scumbag fires a Liberty device at a cop, and the cop deletes him. Oh, well, I'm gonna go get some new tennis shoes. Let's go riot. It's like, that's not a civilization. That's just the downfall of a country. You can't live like that for long without splitting apart. And it's like, people are gonna be like, yeah, let's split apart. Let's absolutely split apart. People probably don't want us to split. Would be the people who hold the debt to America, the banker class. People would be like, wait a minute, which country is holding the debt? And like, realistically, honestly, she's looking at, you know what, we're going to start new countries. You bankers can pay each other, because it's like, it's your machinations this whole time that have been getting America how far into debt with the Federal Reserve. Gee, why'd you start the Federal Reserve in 1913? Audit the Fed. Yeah. How's a country going in debt? Like, who's behind that? Mr. Rothschilds and Rockefellers. And anyway, like, comment, subscribe, guys. Strap on your tinfoil hat, and I will see you all next episode.